Next step for us is going to be really accentuating the image itself. So temporarily I'm going to turn off that layer so that we can sort of work with the image and try and figure out good balancing, and then we'll sort of reapply that later on to finish it off. Now, the thing that I want to do here is create a real strong connection between the background and the foreground. It's a little weak at the moment. This layer helps sort of blend the two and sort of marry the two together, but it's going to really help to get some, like, sky lighting effects. So are you guys familiar with what a lens flare is?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Well, lens flare is one of these, where your camera, basically the lens of the camera has like a refraction of light as it gets to the film. So what I'm going to do with this is use a lens flare to create a visual connection between my building and the sky itself, right? So that's kind of why I chose the angle of the sun for where it is. I think this one might do it for me. I'll give it a shot, but I could always bring in a new one later if this one doesn't work. So let me copy that. I'm going to drop it in Photoshop. So what I need to do with this is, the key for a lens flare is that the flare needs to come from a light source. Meaning if the sun is behind you, you won't have a lens flare in your image. Okay, so that's very important for most of your renderings. But if you happen to see the sun in your shot, or if it's very, very close, you might get a little bit of lens flare. What I'm going to do here is scale this thing up to a point where, well, I guess the angle isn't really right for this one. I don't like this one. I'm going to get rid of it. Well, I'll leave it there, but let's find a little better one. Let's go to that guy. This one's really big. That'll work. Okay, let's copy that. Ooh, that's big. Let's go to 50% size. Let's get in there. Cool. I'm going to flip that, put it over here, and size it up to something like that. Now, the key for this is that lens flare needs to fall sort of where that light source is. So when I pull this layer down, the opacity layer, you can see that it doesn't really fall where the sun source is coming from. It's coming from up here. I've got a little bit of light leak coming out from the sun in that spot. So I'm going to yank this thing up to that location, roughly. And I need to resize it so that it fits while it's in that location. Something like that. Okay. Now this one's going to look like really intense in comparison to what most people would want for the composition of an image. So just bear in mind that you might not want something that's this intense. But let's go back up to 100% and let's switch this one on to not lighten. Yeah, actually I think lighten was it. Screen's what I wanted, sorry. Okay, so screen is the one that I want. It's going to take all the blacks and just kind of pull the blacks out, but it allows the color to kind of remain. But the other thing is, this image is a very warm image. So for me to have a very cool lens flare is jarring. So I can actually modify that. Let's go back to normal here for a second. I can modify the color range of this image. Let's go to Image, Adjustment. Let's go to Hue and Saturation. And this can be colorized to any color I really see. So I need to pull the color range down to a warmer range. I'm going to go with something a little more golden, like a golden orange, goldenrod sort of thing. So now I'm going to switch this back onto screen, and you'll see it's a little warmer. That fits pretty well, right? Now, I did mention that this sunburst is like way, way, way too intense, so that's going to have to come down a little bit. And actually, I'm going to yank that so that the actual middle of that sunburst is a little higher, something like that. Okay, so so that's the tool that I used. What I'm talking about, or what I was talking about earlier with subtlety, is that It's a small thing. It doesn't have to be like a punch you in the face sort of effect in order to generate what I'm talking about. That's going to sort of pull something together. So what you kind of need to get in the habit of doing with this sort of thing is bring something down to a level where it's almost invisible. And I think you'll be surprised that when you start clicking, on and off, the difference is actually pretty significant across the sheet, right? Like that is a very different thing than it is to that. But if all you see is this image and I tell you, show me where everything is with the lens flare, you're going to say, oh, up here and there's a little bar going across the top, right? Probably. Those are the most obvious ones. Some of us might be able to pull out like a little bit of a shadow thing going on here, but you won't really see it very well unless you start clicking this on and off, okay? So anyway, that's light leak, or that's a lens flare. What questions do you have about that? Yeah.
I can't change the color of my lens flare.
I'll come check it out.
Okay.
Okay, but let me get through another video segment because I think I'm going to keep them together and then I'll come troubleshoot with you. Any other questions? Okay.